Hello everyone, my name is Abhishek and welcome back to my channel. So today we are at day 20 of our complete DevOps course, and in this video I'm going to talk about GitHub Actions. So if you haven't watched our previous videos, so in the last class we talked about Jenkins. So we typically looked at Jenkins zero to hero, where we talked right from installation of Jenkins to configuring it. Then we also looked at 3 live projects on Jenkins. We saw how to use Docker as an agent. Like, if you use virtual machines as agents, you are wasting a lot of compute resources on Jenkins. So I explained you how to use Docker containers so that your pipelines gets executed on this Docker agents. And once your job is completed or once your job is done, these containers gets deleted, or this container gets terminated or killed, so that there is no waste of compute, right? So if you haven't watched that video, you can click on this link, or you can look into this repository, or else you can also go to my channel and watch those videos. Perfect. So today's topic is completely about GitHub Actions. So as usual, I've created a repository for you in case somebody is not able to follow the video, or let's say somebody feels that I'm going very fast in the video. What you can do is you can either watch this repository, fork this repository, or start this repository, and I have step-by-step explanation of what I am going to talk today. Okay. So now just a disclaimer, this repository is not complete. I'm going to add more and more things to this repository. For now, in the examples folder, I just have three examples. One is deploy to Kubernetes, deploy to Docker Swarm, and deploy one Java application by building it through Maven, testing the code quality using Sonar, and then deploying to Kubernetes. But in future, I'll add more examples to it, or even if you want to contribute to me to my GitHub repository, you can also do that. Okay. So now quickly jump onto the topic for today, that is GitHub Actions. So what is GitHub Actions? So GitHub Actions is yet another CI/CD solution. Okay. So if you want to compare it with Jenkins, they do similar tasks, like they execute your continuous integration and continuous delivery, but the primary difference is GitHub Actions is focused only on GitHub. Okay, just like GitLab CI is also a CI/CD solution that GitLab is offering you, but it is only focused on GitLab platform. So one big thing to understand, or whenever you want to consider GitHub Actions or GitLab CI, the primary thing you have to understand is what your organization's goal is. So do you want to continue on GitHub? Do you want to continue on GitLab? Or in the future, you might want to migrate to different platforms. In such cases, GitHub Actions or GitLab CI is not the right solution for you. Okay, because again, they are platform oriented solutions. Just like why we choose Terraform over CloudFormation templates, because Terraform is a tool that can work on multi-cloud, or it can work on the hybrid cloud environments. So similarly, GitHub Actions, although it is very powerful, although it is like the tool that I am suggesting better than Jenkins, like I'm going to explain you the pros and cons. Even in the first class of CI/CD, I explained you why GitHub Actions is better than Jenkins. But saying that, if your platform or if your application is going to move from GitHub to GitLab in the future, or GitHub to AWS in the future, or any self-hosted Git repositories or Azure DevOps, do not use GitHub Actions, because you will waste a lot of time, and then in future you will put a lot of efforts from in migrating your Actions files to Jenkins files or something else. Okay, perfect. Now, so GitHub Actions, basically you don't have to install the plugins. Like for example, if I want to write one GitHub Actions file, like my first GitHub Actions file, what you need to do is you just need to go to the root of your repository, like the parent directory of your repository, and just create .actions .github/workflows folder. Okay, so once you create .github/workflows folder, whatever action, like let's say this is my GitHub Actions file, and in the first line I said on push. Okay, so this will say GitHub that, okay, whenever there is a push action, or whenever there is a commit that is created into this repository, by default you have to execute this pipeline. Okay, whatever I write in this pipeline, irrespective of what action is done, like it can be a small commit, it can be a big commit, or you are modifying test related files, you are modifying, like irrespective of that, once you define that on push action or on pull request action, on issue action. So what GitHub will do is it will look into the action, like somebody has done a commit, then it will come here and watch for the CI files, and it understood, okay, there is a push request. Like whenever there is a push request, the user has said that I need to execute this pipeline or actions file. So GitHub will start executing the action file. Now, is there a restriction? Like, do I have to put only one action files here, or I can put 10 action files or 20 action files? So there is no limitation at all. Like, depending upon the number of action files that you want to run. For example, in one action file, you might want to verify if a user has provided all the details in the pull request or not. For example, organizations have like conditions, like whenever you are creating a pull request, you have to provide proper description, you have to provide which issue is it solving. So you can also validate those things in one actions file or in one pipeline. In the other pipeline, you can verify if there is formatting or linting issues. In the third pipeline, you can verify if your CI is passing. In the fourth pipeline, you can do your CD. So it depends on how do you want to do. For example, let me show you one popular project. Let me show you Argo CD. You can take any other projects that is using GitHub Actions. So if you see here, similarly, there is a .github folder, and if you go to .github folder, again there is workflows folder. Okay, if you go to workflows folder, you'll see that there are bunch of pipelines here, right? One is CI build, so it is building the CI. Then it is checking the code. Okay, then image.yaml. After that, like I mentioned you, PR title check.yaml. That means they are just verifying if the PR title is perfect or not. Then release.yaml, which will release, and finally the sync, which will verify, like if your code has any, if it is creating any vulnerabilities, or if it is not adhering to any security standards. So this pipeline will validate. Similarly, you can also do n number of pipelines in your GitHub, .github .workflows, and whatever actions that you configure. So here you can say push comma pull request, push comma pull request comma issues. So GitHub does not mind executing your pipelines on the actions that you are providing. Okay, if you provide 3 actions, it will just verify that, okay, either of the action has to be matched. If either of the action is matched, or if one of the actions is matched, then your GitHub will start executing this pipeline. Okay, now let us see how easy is it to write GitHub Actions. So you can also, like I mentioned, copy this repository and execute your first actions file. So because many of our subscribers or viewers are familiar with Python, what I have decided is I'll write a very basic Python uh, addition example. Okay, so what I've done is this is my src folder, and inside the src I created a addition.py file. Okay, so in this addition.py file, what is there? It's just a addition function, and here I am testing the addition functionality. Okay, so this is unit testing, and this is your basic, like addition program, where it is saying addition function, where it is saying pass two variables and return the addition of two variables. So I've tested this here. Now let me write a GitHub Actions, or let me write a pipeline. What this pipeline has to do is, whenever there is a new commit that is getting created, okay, let's say, let me do it in live. Okay, what I'll do is I'll just modify something here. I'll add a new comment. This is a test commit. Now, as soon as I commit, what should happen is GitHub Actions should check out this program, okay, or it has to check out this code, and then it has to create a Python environment for me, right? Because there is no server, that I did not configure any server. In Jenkins, you have your servers pre-configured, right? What you'll do is either you'll use Docker containers, which I explained in your previous class, or else what you'll do is you'll create your worker nodes, and inside your worker nodes you will install Python, and you will set up all the required environment. And then finally what you'll do is you will run this program, and then you will run your tests. So now I want everything to happen in GitHub Actions. Let us see what GitHub Actions does. As soon as I click on the commit changes, okay, now what happens is just go to your root directory, and you will see this yellow button. Once you click on it, it will say that your actions is running. Let me click on one of these. I'll tell you why there are two actions, but before that, let us see what is happening. Okay, firstly, it set up the job. Now it said that it is checking out the code. Okay, where is it getting this information from? I wrote all of them in the CI file or in the pipelines file. I'll show you that. Okay, so run actions slash checkout at the rate v3. What is this and what is it doing? Okay, so it is basically a plugin that I am configuring in the pipeline.yaml or the ci.yaml, and I am saying GitHub that okay, check out the repository. After that, I said set up Python. Okay, where it set up the Python. Then I said install the dependencies if at all there is something, but in my specific case, there are no dependencies. It's just a simple addition.py. Finally, it has to run the test where it has to just execute the test that I showed you. And then it says that the job is complete. Now let us see how did I do all of these things? Is it a big deal or does it take you to master GitHub Actions? No, not at all. So you can just write all of these things in first 5 minutes. Like, even if you watch this video, you can, after this video, you can directly create your own GitHub repository and you can write this file. It is that simple. Okay. So it follows the YAML standard or YAML formatting. So if you are aware of Kubernetes, or if you are already aware of YAML indentation and syntaxing, then it's a cakewalk for you. So firstly, provide the name of your GitHub Actions, where I said this is my first GitHub Actions. After that, like I mentioned you, I said that on every commit, okay, I can change this event as well, but I said on every commit, just execute this GitHub Actions. Then here starts your actual execution. Okay, job, you can correlate it with as pipeline in Jenkins. Okay, so here, if you create 3 jobs, that means you are running 3 Jenkins pipelines. Okay, so even in one file, you can write multiple jobs. Like, in one file, you are executing multiple pipelines. It's up to you. But here, I just used, I just created one job. And what I'm saying is use Ubuntu latest as the container image. Okay, like if you remember previously, what we have done is we configured in Jenkins pipeline that, okay, I have to use Docker as agent. And once I use Docker as agent, use this image. Okay, it can be Ubuntu or it can be Python or something like that. So similarly, here for GitHub Actions also, you'll say, okay, use Ubuntu latest image, and inside that, set up a Python environment. So now what I'm saying is my addition functionality has to be verified on Python 3.8 as well as Python 3.9. Okay, so that's the reason why you saw 2 jobs that were getting executed. If I mention here Python 2.7, okay, what will happen is now your Python, like your pipeline will be executed on 3 versions. Okay, so that is again a flexibility that GitHub is offering you. Even if you don't want all of these things, you can get rid of all of these things and just say that, okay, here in the Python version, just say Python 3.8. Okay, so what is the next step that I am doing is I am basically checking out the code. Okay, so till here I did nothing. I just said that, okay, use one of the environments, that is Ubuntu latest, that has Python 3.8 and 3.9. Like, I want 2 environments. After that, here starts your steps where you write your actual code. Okay, it's like stages in Jenkins, right? So in Jenkins, you define multiple stages, right? You want your build stage, you want your test stage, you want your sash stage, dash stage, and finally you say your deploy stage. Similarly, you can also segregate your GitHub Actions into multiple steps, wherein first step I am saying the first step has to be to check out the code. Now, where did I get this information from? So this is a standard that you can follow. If you don't know how to figure out these things, like every time, just go to your GitHub Actions documentation. Okay, so if you go to GitHub Actions documentation, so the documentation itself will tell you what are the plugins that GitHub Actions provides. Okay, so for example, if you want to check out the code, okay, so go to your just click on the Kickstart, and you will have bunch of plugins and bunch of examples. In each example, they'll explain you, like, for example, to build and test. Okay, so build and test Go application, build and test Java application with Ant, build and test Java application with Maven. Just open this one. Okay, build and test Java application with Maven. Here you will see that, what they are doing is firstly they are checking out the code. So in this example and in my example, the step is the same: actions hyphen checkout version 3. The reason why is it same is because it's a plugin. Okay, so it is not a configuration that you are writing by yourself. It is just a plugin that you are using. Like I told you, GitHub Actions has a marketplace of plugins, and you can just use these plugins. Unlike in Jenkins, what you will do, you will go to your Jenkins manage plugins and you will install the plugins and you will do all of those things, right? But in GitHub Actions, the plugins are auto installed. Like, they are installed by default. All that you need to do is whichever plugin that you want to use. Like in my case, I said action setup Python at the rate version 2. It doesn't mean Python 2. It means like, whenever you see at the rate, it is the version of the plugin, but it is not the version of your programming language or your tool. Okay, so setup hyphen python at the rate version 2 does not mean that you are installing Python 2, but it means that you are using setup hyphen python plugin, the version 2 of the plugin. Okay, so if you compare it here, it says setup hyphen java at the rate v3. That means it is installing version 3 of the Java plugin. Okay, so even if you see the syntax and the naming convention is quite similar. If tomorrow you want to build a Node.js application, or let me take Ruby application here. Okay, so all that changes is you just have to modify setup Java to setup Ruby. Okay, and you want to define which version of the plugin that you want to use. So the biggest advantage of GitHub Action is you will have to write very less code. Okay, because the configuration is quite similar for different applications, whether it is Python application, Java application, Node application. You're only playing with the plugins, and those plugins are already installed. But the only disadvantage is that these plugins are very limited in scope. Okay, because GitHub Actions is very new, right? Even though it is there for last 3 to 4 years, but if you try to compare it with Jenkins or any other CD tools, that CI/CD tools that are available in the market, so GitHub Actions is still a budding tool if you compare it with it. After you do this, okay, so setup Python is done. Then you said Actions Python. Okay, that means you just configured Python environment inside your Ubuntu latest. What happens after that is, you can write your steps. What I'm saying, just install pip, then install the PyTest, which through which I am going to test my application, and finally just run the PyTest. So this is very simple way of writing GitHub Actions. So you can use this same example, just like I told you, fork this repository, clone it, try it by yourself, then look into the logs, see what is happening. This way you can understand GitHub Actions in a better way. And the other thing is that if you go to the settings, okay, so you have options for just go to actions here, and then you can configure your custom runners as well. Like, let's say you don't want to use, you can just click on it and say new self-hosted runners, using which you can create your own runners. Okay, so similar to Jenkins, right? Either you can use Docker containers, or you can create your own host runners, or you can create your own worker nodes and you can use on it. Let's say you are not happy with the default runners that GitHub is providing, because you can understand that these runners are light in nature, or they don't have enough compute resources. You might want to do some load testing, which GitHub Actions is not providing you that much compute. So in such cases, you can create your new self-hosted runners. Even if you have issues with the security or something, create your own self-hosted runners and you can execute on your self-hosted runners. And there are things like GitHub Actions provides integrated is, you can also store your secrets. If you go to my next example and see, so again, go to the examples folder. So here I have one example which says how to deploy the Java application, configure Maven, Sonar, and finally deploy to Kubernetes. So one doubt that you should get is, okay, so if I am doing the entire thing on GitHub Actions, where will I store the passwords? Like, the kubeconfig file. So kubeconfig file has to be extremely secure. You cannot share the kubeconfig file with someone else. So what GitHub Actions does is it provides you the native support to store the secrets. Like, you can go to the settings, and you have an option to store your CI/CD secrets. And using that CI/CD secrets, what I've done is I have stored my kubeconfig file, I've stored the Sonar token, any secure information you can store. And if you try to compare my previous example with this example, there is not much difference. Okay, so similarly, I'm checking out code. I'm using one more plugin for Kubernetes. Okay, so this plugin information you can get from GitHub Docs. And I'm using the same steps. Okay, so this step I'm executing the Maven target. In this step I'm just executing the Sonar related actions, and finally I'm using Kubernetes. Tomorrow, if you want to set up the same thing for your organization, okay, irrespective of any additional steps that you have, the basic configuration or the basic skeleton you can just copy from my repository, or you can just copy from the examples that I have shown you. So that is the advantage of using GitHub Actions. Now let me try to compare it with Jenkins, because that is one of the important things that many people have the question, like, should I start with GitHub Actions or should I start with Jenkins, or should I implement GitHub Actions or Jenkins in my project? So to fundamentally explain you, one major disadvantage with GitHub Actions is it is very scope to the platform. So tomorrow, if you want to move from one platform to another platform, let's say GitHub to AWS code commit, or from GitHub to you want to move to Azure DevOps. Okay, so in such cases, do not use GitHub Actions. That is one of the disadvantage. But if you come to the advantages, like it can be an interview question. So even I have provided the details here. So if somebody is asking you what are the advantages of GitHub Actions over Jenkins, so you can simply say that the hosting. Okay, so what I mean by hosting is, if you have to create your Jenkins instance, like yesterday's class I showed you, you have to create a EC2 instance, then you have to install Jenkins in it, then you have to expose your inbound traffic, like you have to do bunch of the things. You have to install the plugins, you have to configure it, and tomorrow if there is new version of Jenkins, you also have to update it, right? If you don't update it, you will run into security issues. So this entire thing is gone with GitHub. I mean the GitHub Actions. So you don't have maintenance effort, you don't have hosting effort. If your platform is only GitHub, then the best thing that you can do is simply migrate to GitHub Actions. For all the open source projects that you will see, 90% of the people use GitHub Actions because of this flexibility that GitHub is providing. So you don't need a another engineer who has to work as a Jenkins maintenance engineer. Okay, after that, the user interface, like I showed you, user interface and writing a Jenkins, GitHub Actions pipeline is very, very simple. After that, coming to the cost, if you create a EC2 instance, if you create worker nodes, you configure auto scaling groups, all of these configurations is not cost effective, right? If you're using GitHub Actions, what am I doing? GitHub Actions is providing you free execution for public projects. Okay, so if your code is open source and if you are a public project, you don't even have to worry about it. Like GitHub Actions is completely free. Whereas if you are a private project, like let's say if I make this repository private, so in such cases, I think there is a limitation for 2000 minutes of execution. I don't remember exactly, but there is a limitation on the private repositories. If your organization is using private repositories, then yeah, you must also evaluate it in terms of the cost. But still, even the cost will be less, and you will not have the maintenance overhead of maintaining Jenkins. Okay, not Jenkins. I'm just taking Jenkins because I'm trying to compare it with our previous video. So these are some pros and cons. You can also look into the details in the GitHub repository. And finally, what I wanted to tell you is if you want to use GitHub Actions over Jenkins, then if you are only public project, open source project, and if your project is not deciding to move from one place to another place in the future, like from GitHub to any other VCS platforms, then GitHub Action is the right tool for you. I hope you like the video. If you have any feedback for me, definitely put that in the comment section. And don't forget to like and share this video with your friends. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next video. Take care, everyone. Bye.